Hello, dear friends. We didn't come here to fear the future. We came here to shape it. Never measure your life by possessions. Measure it by the hearts you touched, the smiles you created, and the love you shared. Opinion piece. How to become independent from the system. All markets fall. The New York Stock Exchange crashes. Has a global bubble burst? How to survive the economic crisis. Crisis drives hunger in Americas. Turkish lira falls to another record low. Bank fined for chasing the debt. The house of cards is collapsing. Creative solutions to make a living. Coal shortage in power plants. We are watching this unfold. Pyramid implodes from the inside out. Stocks could fall 10% in December. Metamorphosis is a painful and difficult process. Small companies versus large corporations. Markets face weeks of uncertainty. Inflation in the Eurozone beats all forecasts. Inflation soars in Spain to its worst figure in 29 years. Nato-Russia standoff over military escalation in Ukraine. Let's start. Millions of citizens struggle for independence from the system as everything collapses around them, according to Michael Snyder. Once upon a time, all the major institutions of our society functioned smoothly, and most people could rely on the fact that they would always be there when they needed them. But now things are going crazy everywhere you look. We are in the midst of the worst supply chain crisis in our entire history. Crime and violence in our largest urban areas is starting to spiral out of control. The energy crisis is another factor that is pushing people to become more independent of the system. Meanwhile, we are seeing a historic burst in entrepreneurship and self-employment as millions of citizens seek to create jobs for themselves and have decided that now it's the time to leave the system and start working for themselves. Small businesses. I have always seen entrepreneurship as a way for human beings to become more independent of the system. If you are considering taking that leap, focus on what you are good at. I can write, and that's that I do. Others can't write but are incredibly talented in other areas. The key is to find something that adds value to the lives of others. Capitalism is bad when it subsidizes large corporations and punishes small businesses. It is good when it allows people to become independent with small businesses. The global energy crisis is another factor that is pushing people to become more independent of the system, because electricity bills could increase by about 50%. And as the global energy crisis intensifies, we could see more painful energy shortages like we have witnessed recently in China, India, and Lebanon. This has motivated many citizens to take matters into their own hands, and at the moment demand for wood-burning stoves is overflowing. Needless to say, demand for firewood has also skyrocketed, and this is pushing prices into unprecedented territory. But those who prepared in advance do not need to pay too much, because they already have all the firewood they need. For years, people have been advised to prepare for the hard times ahead. Now, those hard times have started to come, and things are starting to get really crazy. Even whole communities are trying to become more independent of the system. If you live in a big city where things are bad, you may have to pack up your belongings and move to a completely different part of the country. I know that sounds extreme, but we live in extreme times. If you want a normal life, you'll want to find a place where people are still determined to live a relative normal life, because things are going to get even crazier as it continues to collapse the system around us. Less purchasing power. Real wages are negative on the year, and that's affecting how consumers spend this holiday season. Consumer confidence has been falling because real wages are negative on the year, as consumer prices in October jumped 6.2% year over year, well above this 5.9% year over year expected. As our food supply dismantles, the European Union is funding a project to create urban food systems, urban gardens, and a blockchain-based digital twin platform to track indoor farming and manufacture synthetic meat from lab to plate. Clearing the picture. The fog is clearing. The financial system teeters on the edge of a cliff. Laws has been passed that make it easier for agencies and banks to confiscate what little money people have managed to hold on to. There are more and more alleged UFO sightings around the world. Media ratings are plummeting because people are waking up and becoming aware. Everything that people considered normal in their lives is undergoing a change. Religion is not the place of comfort it used to be because so many religious leaders have been exposed. Every time there is another public exposure, people wonder what is happening to the world. None of this has been by chance. The globalists realized early on that their tactics would eventually disappear, so they had several things lined up to keep the herd down. To accomplish something of this magnitude would take some skill and some luck, but they ran out of luck over time. There are still many of us who remember how things used to be. Many of us were taught civic and critical thinking skills. There are many of us who can see through the appearance, and younger people are catching up fast. For those people who were sleeping, it was like one blow after another as people watched their illusions shattered one by one. The narrative they have been fed no longer matches the reality they are seeing, because the stories no longer work. All of us who are awake and aware owe it to our fellow man to share information on how to fight this dystopia. Reset news. The news of the currency reset is ready. We await the final release code. Keep your frequency high and see how it is done. Feel it down in your being. When we get to DEFCON 1, nuclear sirens would be sounded for 10 minutes, but then we would be locked in according to Whiplash 347. DEFCON page has just released DEFCON 4. Going from scale 3 to 4 means that the world has become a place of savings. The DEFCON system was developed by the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It prescribes five graduated levels of readiness or alert states for forces. It increases in severity from DEFCON 5, least severe, to DEFCON 1, most severe, to match different situations. Nothing more was known about the global financial reset than was already reported, Actually, it began in earnest last Sunday, November 21st, when the central pivot of the reset, the Iraqi dinar, was internationalized. Monday, November 29th, was the 333rd day of the year and was 33 days before January 2022. On Tuesday, the currencies of the rest of the world, the first basket, were exchanged at their new values in Zurich and Asia. We must be very careful in accepting and rejecting information, and we must pay attention to both the information and its source. I mean, after all, that could tell the truth even a pathological liar. True, they probably don't realize they are doing it, but in the end, it is the message that has to stand or fall on its own merits. Iraq and China. During Monday, the Iraqi dinar was officially traded on world markets. Iraq's finance minister appeared on television and said that positive signs of monetary tightening are now showing in the budget and white papers. The governor of the Central Bank of Iraq told citizens that the reform is complete and that the monetary adjustment is showing in the budget. In Iraq, they are running public service announcements on TV on how to handle the new lower denominations. They are preparing their people on what to expect over the next few days, according to Max Sira. This is related to the peace global bubble burst. Evergrande prepares for collapse, causing major reset worse than 2008. Close quotes. We are already seeing the cracks, and in the meantime, we watched the markets and saw the collapse on Friday. We are watching in detail how it all plays out. Slowly but surely, countries are being shut down again because of the new variety. Major black swan events were expected to occur at any time, such as global economic collapse that would trigger a universal takeover of the media and three-letter intelligence agencies. They are letting the pyramid implode from the inside out, breaking the structure to collapse the whole matrix. Slowly but surely, the house of cards is collapsing. We should find a refreshing source of much of the roller coaster ride. However, some of the disinformation is constructive, according to Sun Tzu. Many of the reset information providers are benevolent. They combine to carry the light and do the best they can, though they could be deceived, as could everyone. The darkness is over. Their days are numbered, and they never achieved their dreams, thanks God. Reflections. Answer from Cinema Galactic. It is not my faith in God, but in human beings, what is waning. Those who are in charge of the reset, the tearing down of the old God, the draining of the Maya, what are they waiting for? They have the ability to reveal the truth to the world. The higher realms are waiting for them to finally show courage and drop the hammer. The most overvalued and dangerous market in history. In quotes. We have the most overvalued and dangerous market that has ever existed, said Administrator Michael Pento, and there are a lot of things that have to go right to keep it afloat. Ready for shipment. According to Steve Biko, like the troops on D-Day, we lightworkers are on both ships, ready for boarding, only for things to be delayed due to bad weather. Only for us, it is more like G-Day, Groundhog Day, because the same thing happens day after day. There is only one thing in creation powerful enough to be of definitive use to keep us in any kind of shape throughout this trauma and waiting time. And that is transforming and transfiguring love. There is only one diet, one balm, one restorative. I know of nothing that can revive us as quickly or completely as savoring the love that flows in our own hearts. That's the real and original geyser, the fountain of youth and the gift of the gods. I see the opening of the heart, called Hidrayam in Sanskrit, as a door that, when opened, connects us to higher dimensions. We may soon experience an opening of the heart, also called singularity, ring of fire and wave of love. Most likely it will be temporary for most, but for some time it will be a complete and permanent opening of the heart, what we know as ascension. Metamorphosis. The beginning in every task is the main thing according to Kaspeter. When you are building a building, the first thing is to dig the foundation. Without the proper foundation, the building would be compromised immediately, and anything built on a faulty foundation would also have problems. The foundation is the most important part of the work. Metamorphosis is a painful and difficult process, as the transformation is radical to create the beginning of a new life. Metamorphosis is a process by which animals undergo rapid and extreme physical changes, sometime after birth. The result of metamorphosis could be a change in the complete body plan of the organism. An example of metamorphosis is the process or change of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly or moth. Metamorphosis involves a much more radical transformation in which the old certainties of modern society are falling away, and something quite new is emerging. To grasp this metamorphosis of the world would require exploring new beginnings, focusing on what is emerging from the old, and trying to grasp future structures and norms in the turmoil of the present. The world at this moment is desperately asking for something new. The old reality that was co-created and reinforced by human beings for generations is crumbling. Not that it ever really served the best interests of the people, but human consciousness has evolved to a point where the matrix of that paradigm has become so discordant and unbalanced that it is naturally imploding. This gives us a new opportunity to focus our intention on designing a new template for the reality we experience. The awakening process often forces us to go through the pain and unwillingness to let go of the old, with which we are so identified. This old familiar pain has a strong hold on us, a hold that has been established throughout our lifetime, the lifetime of our ancestors, and sometimes throughout our lifetime. The process of getting rid of the old can lead to a spiritual crisis. This occurs when the momentum of our dialogue with the unseen intelligence is in motion, but we are not ready to fully surrender to it. The experience of a spiritual crisis ultimately serves to help us redefine our own strength, allowing us to deepen our dialogue with the unseen intelligence. When we resist this process, we end up using all our energy and resources to try to maintain the false security of the old. It takes great courage, faith, and dedication to transform what we have known. The intelligence of life guides us to let go of all the false constructs we have accumulated along the way. It brings us back to the beginning of who we really are. If there is one thing that almost everyone agrees on, is that beginnings are almost always difficult. Big beginnings like moving to a new city or small beginnings like choosing to walk to work instead of taking the bus. It doesn't matter how exciting the new beginning is, or how much we plan and prepare for it. Starting over gives most people a sense of dread. Will I do it right? Will I have enough energy to make this change stick? Will the people in this new company support me? Am I making the right decision from the start? The proverbial genie is out of the bottle, and there is no way to put it back in. There is no turning back now. There is an evolving tidal wave of consciousness unfolding that will swallow everything in this path. The best part of this particular metamorphosis with respect to the world is that it will result in something magnificent and unique. The change is for something magical to unfold that has not been done before. Very special, unique, sacred, and spectacular. The caterpillar crawled for a long time. It is an inevitable process, the stage of metamorphosis, that is the transition. The transformation is painful, but when the caterpillar emerges remarkably into a beautiful butterfly, one cannot defy the power of nature and deny the beauty of miracles. Breaking news. All markets fall. Financial markets fell sharply on Tuesday, but recovered strongly after reassuring comments from European officials. Stock indexes fall nearly 2% after Powell says faster stimulus tapering possible. Wall Street's three major stock indexes each fell nearly 2% in afternoon trading Tuesday after Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said that the central bank was considering ending its support for stimulus for the economy faster than originally planned. Stocks could fall 10% in December. The stock market could suffer a 10% correction in December if the Fed begins to clamp down on inflation, says Jeremy Siegel, a respected author and finance professor. Markets face weeks of uncertainty. The fate of global markets now hangs on getting out of doubt, which could leave investors with weeks of uncertainty awaiting answers. Turkish lira falls to another record low. The Turkish lira fell to a record low, weighted down by the prospect of a faster pace of Fed tightening. The lira fell as much as 4.7% to 13.4541, almost half per dollar. I repeat, 13.5 per dollar at 8 p.m. in Istanbul, after Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said it is appropriate to consider ending the central bank's gradual tapering of asset purchases a few months earlier than planned. Investment diversification. When it comes to investing, diversification is key. By spreading your wealth, you are less likely to suffer a major financial blow if one of your investments doesn't work out. It is about not putting all your eggs in one basket. Inflation. Rising inflation dents consumer confidence. U.S. consumer confidence fell to a 9-month low in November, amid concerns about the rising cost of living. Eurozone inflation beats all forecasts with record 4.9%. Eurozone inflation soared to a record for the single currency era, beating all forecasts, adding to the European Central Bank's challenge ahead of a crucial meeting next month on the future of monetary stimulus. Stop adding fuel to the inflation fire. The world is at an inflection point. As labor is no longer abundant, global conditions may be shifting from deflationary to inflationary. Fed abandons transitory label for inflation. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell said Tuesday that the word transitory is no longer the most accurate term to describe the nature of the current high rate of inflation. Crisis drives a hunger in the Americas. Hunger in Latin America and the Caribbean reached the highest level since 2000, the Pan American Health Organization said Tuesday. Bank fined for charging dead people. One of Australia's largest banks, Westpac, apologized and agreed to pay millions in fines after settling 6 or 7 ongoing investigations into consumer harm, including charging fees to deceased people. That noise is of my cat. It's making noise. Spain. Inflation soars in Spain, leaving worst figure in 29 years. Rising food and fuel prices have caused inflation to soar to 5.6% in November, the highest level in 29 years. The Council of Economists lowers its growth forecast from 2021 to 4.7%. The General Council of Economists has lowered its economic growth forecast for this year from 5 to 4.7%, while that for 2022 have been cut from 6 to 5.6%. It also expects an increase in insolvencies of 24% in the current year, which would place Spain in first position worldwide in this regard. Cantabria will ask for the declaration of catastrophic zone for the floods. The government of Cantabria will ask the Council of Ministers the declaration of areas seriously affected by a civil protection emergency for the localities flooded in the episode of heavy rains on Monday. Cyber Monday brings to a close a full week of discounts. Cyber Monday brought to a close a week full of discounts, which began with an extended Black Friday and which as a whole leads the Christmas campaign, the one with the highest turnover for the commercial sector. Energy. Oil prices fall. Oil prices fell on Tuesday, with crude oil futures dropping more than 5%, spooking financial markets and raising concerns about oil demand. Coal shortages at power plants. Coal piles at power plants have shrunk to their lowest point since the 70s, and the race to build up inventories ahead of the heating season has pushed thermal coal prices to their highest levels in more than a decade. Gas rises in Europe. The benchmark price of natural gas in Europe rose above €100, or $190 per barrel of oil equivalent, ahead of a series of pipeline capacity auctions that are seen as a test of Russia's willingness to ease the supply crisis. Nato-Russia standoff over military escalation on Ukraine border. At a meeting of NATO foreign ministers in the Latvian capital Riga, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg warned Russia over the Russian troop buildup near the Ukrainian border. China's gas slump. China's property market woes are causing pain in broader parts of its economy, as disappointing earnings led shares of a major gas distributor to sink the most since 2000, wiping out $2.5 billion in market value in one day. Chinese real estate freezes its shares. Debt-ridden Chinese property developer Fantasia Holdings froze its share price in Hong Kong after its creditors filed a winding up petition against one of its subsidiaries in connection with a loan in which it acted as a guarantor. China bankruptcy. The giant bankruptcy of China's Evergrande real estate company could burst the global economic bubble. Shares of China Evergrande Group fell as much as 4.8% Monday morning after its chairman cut his stake in the cash-strapped real estate developer to raise about $344 million. Macau travel tycoons arrest shakes world's biggest gambling hub. The arrest of Macau's group travel tycoon is expected to curtail business at the world's biggest gambling hub, and Chinese authorities underline their intention to crack down on what they see as a dangerous outflow of funds from the mainland. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.